To your bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Mariani.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I do look forward to the debate today. I think it should be a good conversation, and I certainly want a full airing of whatever concerns anyone has, because I think this bill is a wonderful bill. It's a strong bill. It's a powerful public safety, corrections, judiciary, civil law bill that serves the people of Minnesota well. And we do that, members, by doing the most important thing that we are called to do as legislators, which is to provide for the public safety of our people. This bill proudly does that, and I proudly stand with it. It is my privilege to present it to you, the Minnesota House Public Safety Criminal Justice Reform and Judiciary Civil Law Omnibus Bill for 2022. What I want to do is just do a broad description of what we're doing in this bill, why we're doing it, why this bill is structured the way it is. I'll be asking Representative Frazier, Madam Speaker, to follow my comments with focusing on the very specific pieces related to public safety in the bill, and then Chair Jamie Becker-Finn of the Judiciary Civil Law Committee will present her dynamic omnibus bill that's been put together with this bill. Members, because I don't want to forget later, and I will if I hold off, I do want to express my gratitude and acknowledgement to several professionals who played key roles in the construction of my committee's important bill that advances public safety for our state. I thank our hardworking nonpartisan staff, Mr. Jeff Diebel, Mr. Ben Johnson, and Mr. John Walls for their expert legal and fiscal analysis work. Our committee pages, we don't always acknowledge our committee pages, but boy, you need them. Our committee pages, Jorge Mendoza and Neoma Jacana, are brilliant, hardworking young people who expertly make sure our committee is always best prepared to conduct our work. Some may know that Jorge is a student and an expert boxer and trainer. And that discipline, no doubt, has conditioned him well to endure the grueling work of committee hearings. Neuma is a Metro State student majoring in public safety. Hopefully our committee work has contributed to her knowledge as she prepares herself for a professional career serving our people. Our committee legislative aide, Abdul Abdullahi, is a newcomer this year and has already proven his mettle as a sharp, diligent, and engaged professional, helping to keep us all together as we move through the fast pace of committee hearings. Our DFL researcher, Ms. Beth Fraser, is brilliant and an accomplished policy thinker and expert in connecting the dots for us of the statutory laws that we are engaged with. Her position had been expertly staffed through February by Ms. Ellen McDaniel, who took leave early in session as she became a new mother. True joy. Their counterpart is GOP researcher Mr. John Holquist, a solid professional with true integrity who I've had the privilege to have served with for many years. And of course, our indomitable, that's a word I don't think I ever get to use, our indomitable committee legislative administrator, Mr. Jamal Lundy. There aren't words big and deep enough to describe all that he powerfully brings to our work in pursuit of good public policy. Thank you to all of you. Members, the Public Safety Criminal Justice Reform Committee for 4 years now has centered its work on the belief that public safety matters. Public safety matters. And because it matters, we must use every tool possible to keep ourselves safe and build community. Every tool. It's pretty clear that we must get better on delivering on public safety. And the many voices we heard in our committee, from law enforcement to community activists, convinces me that we can be better. With the state helping our local cities, towns, counties, and tribal governments, we can be effective at minimizing crime and building strong communities. Frankly, however, that means we can't just only do the old things, like over-depending on peace officers to do it all, like accepting low clearance rates from their work that comes from under-resourcing them with the things that matter, like labs and forensics work, like pretending that youth workers, youth themselves, victims of crime, mental health co-responders, community organizers, small businesses don't have something to offer to solve criminal activity, that somehow they can't work effectively with peace officers. And members, as shown in the recent several reports on the major harmful misconduct of the Minneapolis Police Department, pretending that mistreating citizens doesn't lead to corroding the trust needed to call on local law enforcement and share info with them. Public safety is too important, members, to have anyone destroy it. We could choose to follow old, effective ways of doing public safety and pretend that none of these real things matter, but it does matter. The old way doesn't work. Any professional law enforcement person will tell you that. As a matter of fact, they did tell us that throughout our hearings. The St. Cloud police chief shared that we must do many things at once, from effective policing to effective youth engagement. It's those many things that this bill does. Members, we have to modernize how we do public safety, not live in the past. That's the power that lies at the heart of this bill and Representative Fraser's Public Safety Innovation Act. There is a powerful role the state must play to help locals innovate their practices so they can do the many things that work. This bill provides both guidance and major resources to locals to that end. Innovation means broad collaboration, bringing everyone to the table to problem solve, bringing the right tools to match up with each particular challenge. That means, for example, when a person is suffering a mental health crisis, we use co-responders trained in mental health intervention to respond to safety calls. It means that when a shooting erupts on a public sidewalk, as it did in front of my wife's workplace a few months ago, we make sure we have trained, licensed peace officers able to respond immediately. And we make sure our local police departments have the investigatory capacity to identify and apprehend those offenders before they do it again. An effective public safety is one where each community, whether in the Twin Cities metro or anywhere in greater Minnesota, has all the tools to prevent crime, to solve crime, and correct the harm caused by the crime. That's what this bill does, with nearly $150 million dedicated to public safety through targeted grants. The bill doesn't throw state money at the challenge. It targets those resources. It targets state funds to prevent and solve. Prevent crime, because we can't simply arrest our way out of crime. Our Minnesota Department of Public Safety Commissioner John Harrington, a former police chief, told us that as did other police chiefs who testified in our committee this year. So this bill makes important appropriations for local electeds, to use all the expertise in their community to work on prevention and intervention. It targets state funds to solve crime, because without apprehending harm doers, they can harm again. Law enforcement professionals shared with us the dire straits they face with not enough capacity for investigations and forensics work. So this bill provides big appropriations to help law enforcement build their capacity to clear cases, to both identify harm doers and arrest them and bring them to justice. It even fast tracks a good chunk of those appropriations in order to meet the perennial challenges that warmer weather brings in the coming months. It targets state funds to correct the harm, because restoring those who are victimized, helping them restore themselves, makes for a stronger community. And strong communities can break cycles of violence. This bill makes permanent appropriations to support victims of crime. And it continues our movement to better professional accountability. A meaningful and strong accountability system centered on licensing standards is needed to end abuse, and this bill strengthens the state's ability to do that by providing better professional capacity at our post board, our Peace Officers Standards and Training Board. Let's be clear. Wrongdoing by those we trust with a part of our public safety only destroys public safety. A free and safe people cannot have that. Rep. Frazier will share more on the Public Safety Innovation Act and its $140+ million investment. In addition to the act, this bill makes a major new step in resourcing local law enforcement with a hefty body camera grant program for local entities. This bill has the state assume permanent storage duties for body camera video, alleviating the big expense for locals that it entails. The bill resources the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to expand its forensics and investigations capacity so it can assist local law, public safety across the state. The bill funds a use of force training program through our higher education system. But I also want to share that this bill makes big investments in juvenile justice for intervention, prevention, and mental health wellness. It makes permanent investments, as I mentioned, in supporting crime victims and survivors. And this is historical. Historic. It makes big investments in putting into place a better way to have the probation and community supervision work that our state deserves. One that helps offenders get right with society, break the cycle of harm doing, and become productive citizens. The counties who deliver much of this work came together for a year to redesign how that could be done, what new effective practices they can do, and recommended how the state can match local funding in a way that drives new practices. This bill adds new funding for counties. It increases that over the next 2 years as counties phase in the implementation of those new practices. The bill also makes a $10 million appropriation to the state opiate epidemic response grant program and targets it to greater Minnesota. It's a scourge that is hurting people across the state, and there are large parts of the state that simply don't have the resources to intervene and prevent. There are a number of other outstanding things that we make happen with this bill as we capitalize on the state surplus that we are blessed with. The bill provides for the Office of Legislative Auditor's recommended data infrastructure for the Department of Corrections. The bill funds a dynamic post-secondary and employment pathway program for those working through and past their incarceration. It creates the Office for Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls. The bill increases funding for combating sex trafficking. It makes a permanent appropriation for local emergency preparedness work of all our county's emergency management departments. This bill takes first steps of helping to replace our aged armor emergency radio systems. These are the systems that our locals, particularly in Greater Minnesota, depend on to be able to coordinate in a timely and effective way when big disasters occur in their communities. It provides for a body armor grant program for firefighters and other EMTs. It implements the Clean Slate Act for automatic expungement of certain misdemeanors. And as we did last year with sexual assault crimes, this bill also increases penalties in areas where we had neglected to do so in the past. It does this for labor trafficking, which is often connected to sex trafficking, to domestic abuse, and to surreptitious filming, which is the gross violation using video to capture the images of others unsuspecting as they're disrobing in certain locales. This is a bold and muscular and smart bill. It doesn't make the mistakes of the past of just throwing money out. It makes targeted, evidence-based appropriations to build up the capacity of local government where public safety is primarily done, to be better and be effective. It respects law enforcement and expects better from it. It arms communities with the different tools it needs to keep us all safe and strong. I now turn to our Vice Chair, Madam Speaker, if you would call on Representative Frazier to explain the Public Safety Innovation Act components of this bill. Thank you.
Members, please take your conversations off of the House floor into the retiring room, the alcoves, or the rotunda. The member from Hennepin, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for that broad overview. I thought you did a very good job laying out the reasons that we have the bill the way we do and how, moving forward, we are not following the policies, the old policies of the past that did not set us in a situation where we can have the best public safety system that we need to keep communities safe and ensure that they stay safe. You all may remember last session when we passed our omnibus bill off the floor. I said I voted for that bill, but I wasn't happy. I thought we hadn't gone far enough. I thought we hadn't been as bold and as ambitious as we could be during the moment that we're in. Well, we're still in that moment, and I knew we would be. We started to work on this bill nearly right after the session ended last year. So it's been months in the making, the bill that we are providing to you today, the policies and the provisions within this bill, with the eye on data-driven, proven, effective policies and strategies that will create the best public safety systems for the state of Minnesota and our communities. And we're doing that by giving resources to our local communities to let them decide how to design their programs. They will apply for these resources, and it will be based on what they believe is best for their communities. We're not telling them what to do. We're giving them resources so they can do what they know is best. And what I'll say, and I don't talk about it much, I am a former city council member. So whenever the state wants to give resources, for me, when I was a city council member, we wanted those resources, and we wanted to be able to plan how we could use those resources. And this is what we're doing. We're giving the resources to our local governments, our counties, our cities, our local tribes, our law enforcement agencies, and we're saying, here are the resources. Here's a bit of guidance, but we want you to figure out what works best for your communities because you know your communities. And that's an important piece that I wanted to add there for anyone that's listening, and particularly for the members of this House to know that this is about local control and local entities putting together programs that are going to work for their communities to create the best public safety program possible for them. The chair mentioned that we have emergency community safety grants. These will be available right away once we pass this bill. So these resources will be available at $15 million for entities to apply for these summer months that are coming up. And this will be local governments, federally recognized tribes, law enforcement agencies, including tribal agencies, and multi-jurisdictional collaborations will be eligible to apply for resources available this summer. And at least half of these funds must be awarded to local and tribal governments. These funds can be used for reentry programs, victim services programs, homelessness assistance programs, mobile crisis teams, and embedded social worker programs. They also can be used to add non-law enforcement staff to free up officers for patrols or service calls. And that's important because what we've heard from some of our law enforcement groups and some of our rank and file officers and our police chiefs is that if we can free up some of our officers from some of the administrative work that they're doing, we can put those officers out in the community to do the work that is needed to keep our communities safe and to partner with community and connect with community to build trust. That is important. As I mentioned, data-driven targeted grants. What that means is this funding will specifically go to the 80 communities with the highest crime rates or highest growth in crime rates. This is important because we want to get resources to where they're needed. We don't just want to put money out there. We want the money and the funds to go directly to where they need it so we can address the issue right away. For our local community innovation grants, $55 million for this fiscal year and $30 million annually. That's important because we need to have continued funding for these grants, for sustained programs, and for those programs to grow as well. And we also have built-in evaluation systems and programs to make sure we can determine what's working and what's not working, what needs to be tweaked, what's working well so we can lean into it more, or we can make sure we scale it up, show those models to the rest of communities around the state, and grow those programs and implement them in other places. Very important. We have local community policing grants. This is $15 million a year. These can be used for co-responder programs, hiring non-law enforcement personnel, again, to free up our peace officers to perform patrols or other response to service calls, and also to hire officers when we need to hire more officers. We also have local investigation grants. The chair mentioned that one of the issues that we have is that when crimes happen, we're not always having the resources we need to solve those crimes. And one thing I know, coming from a community when I was growing up, where there was a lot of crime is, we wanted the crimes to be solved. We did call our police, but there wasn't always a high solving rate. Folks weren't always being caught. Evidence wasn't always being collected. So the individuals that were doing harm, sometimes community peers, those individuals were still in the community and allowed to continue doing harm. We want to make sure that we equip our communities and law enforcement with resources to do the investigation, collect the evidence, so that we can prosecute those cases, take those individuals out of the community, hold them accountable, and keep our communities safe. And I will say another piece of that. In the community I grew up in, not only did we want community members that committed harm among us to be held accountable, we also wanted them to be rehabilitated and been put on a positive path back into the community. That's what we wanted. And we also wanted anyone that did harm to community members to be held accountable. And that also means if it's someone with a badge that has a sworn duty to protect and serve. And I gotta tell you, I haven't met one single officer that I've talked to that does not agree with that premise. That if someone violates that sacred oath to protect and serve, they should be held accountable. If they are not, it is a blight on the profession and it makes their job tougher. And they don't want that. That leads into another vital piece of the Innovation Act, and that is to build community trust, create accountability, and have transparency. And what local law enforcement will tell us, rank and file folks will tell us, chiefs will tell us, is that the more trust that you have with your community, the deeper connections that you have with your community, their jobs are easier because when something happens, someone will say something. Someone will give them information that will lead to finding evidence to solve the crime that happened in the community. But when that trust is lacking, it makes their jobs harder. So of course, we have built-in policies in here that will deal with addressing accountability. We're providing resources to the post board to allow them to have the investigators that they need so they can investigate if there's claims or reports of misconduct. Of course we're providing that. That's what's needed. It's a vital component. You can't do the other pieces that I talked about without having that trust. So we're providing those resources. And these things are absolutely in consultation with law enforcement, especially from the communities I come from, and other communities that we've had conversations with from people around the state of Minnesota. And the reason I say that is because it's important. Those 80 jurisdictions that are going to be eligible, that is based on crime data. So this is around our state, and we must address things around this state. It cannot be focused on just one particular area of our state. And I feel oftentimes we tend to get into this debate and we focus on one particular area within our state when we have communities in need around this state. This bill addresses that, and I think it addresses it well. That is a brief overview. I'll stop there, Madam Speaker, and I'm looking forward to this debate because I believe right now we're still in this moment. Not only is the country watching us, the world is watching us. And we still have an opportunity to be a leader and create a model that could be duplicated around this country. We still have the opportunity. We just have to have the will to do it. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the public safety provisions are kind of the main show today, but I'm going to talk about data. Just kidding, I won't start with the data portion of the bill. We have a really good bill here in our Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law bill. From day one, my focus has been on liberty and access to justice for all, and that's really what we do in this bill. A relatively brief overview. So what we do is there's some additional funding for our courts at every level. I always have to point out that we are the ones who fund an entire third branch of government here in the Judiciary Committee, and we do take that seriously from both parties, our duty to do that. In addition, there are large increases for civil legal services, and I'm going to tell you why that number is large. Civil legal services serve people in every single county in our state. Every single person here has a constituent who has benefited from civil legal services. And right now we're at a crisis point with civil legal services where of the people who call or come to the door asking for help, only 45% of the people who are eligible are getting access to those services because they are so underfunded that they're turning away people who need help. We're talking about domestic violence cases, housing discrimination, access to, if you are a person with a disability and your Social Security benefits are denied, you try to figure that system out without help. And that's something that our civil legal services attorneys and staff do for people throughout our state. In addition, we have some increased funding for the Department of Human Rights, increasing investigative capacity, hate incident tracking, as well as doing outreach to communities so that we can build that trust and make sure people are reporting the things that are happening. In addition, we have an important provision, I think there's maybe 5 or 6 versions of this bill introduced, to eliminate the fees on court documents. I actually looked up a court document today that in previous years I would not have been able to actually look up that criminal complaint, and I was able to pull it up on my computer. Because of COVID, our courts speeded things up with making sure we all have access to documents online. We were worried they're going to start charging fees for that. Well, now we're going to make sure that those public documents are actually public and that everyone can access them for free online and in person at the courthouse. This bill also includes, now I will talk about the data part. This bill includes several things we've already passed off this House floor, as well as the student data privacy bill that Representative Feist has championed for a couple years now. Others have worked on that throughout the years. The student data privacy, protecting data about our students in a world where they're accessing apps online. Kids have computers and phones, and this is a way to better protect kids' data. And I do want to thank the members of the Data Practices Commission, maybe the nerdiest commission that we have, but this is something that passed unanimously out of that commission, which for folks who are unfamiliar is equal for Democrats and for Republicans, and we had unanimous support for this provision. As well as other things that we address in this bill have to do with government efficiency. Specifically, we authorize notaries to perform marriages. I know some folks are excited about that. Permanently allow for electronic filing of marriage licenses, and streamline post-divorce name changes for folks who need to take care of that. Finally, I guess I talked long enough that my computer went to sleep. Finally, I want to highlight the part of the bill that I am the most proud of. From the first day I found out that I would be chairing the Judiciary Finance Committee, my top priority has been to address the decades of underfunding of our public defense system. Minnesota has never even come close to adequately funding public defense, despite it being constitutionally mandated. The Sixth Amendment clearly states that you have a right to an attorney if you're charged with a crime. Further, the U.S. Supreme Court has held that it is the responsibility of the states to provide that attorney if the defendant cannot afford one. This is very well settled law. Funding for public defense in Minnesota has not even come close to being adequate to meet minimum national standards. Despite the clear constitutional requirement that we do better, year after year, funding for public defense has been treated as just another line item in the budget for us to fight for. This year, we have an opportunity to change that. Our bill funds public defense, so we at least meet minimum national standards. With this surplus, we have an incredible opportunity to finally provide a constitutionally mandated right to our citizens that impacts our most basic freedom, a person's physical liberty. And we have bipartisan support and nearly unanimous vote for that public defense funding in our committee, as well as support in the Senate. The foundation of criminal law in the U.S. is based on the principles that a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty, and that a person has a right to an attorney. And with this bill, we make sure that those foundational rights are guaranteed to all of our citizens. Access to justice is the right of every single person and should not depend on how much money you make or how much wealth you have access to. I want to thank the members of my committee for helping us move this important work forward. We do get a lot of work done. I always tell folks I keep track of stats, and we move a lot of bills. We've passed a lot of bills off this House floor already, and I really appreciate the diligence of all the members of our committee. Also do want to thank our staff, especially because all of my staff this year is new. So I think that this also speaks to their great work to be able to do this without the years of experience. They have done an incredible job. Our all-female team of Bryn Sias, Michaela Brunner, and Beth Fraser, who does double duty in the Public Safety Committee. So just thank you, members. These articles are very important, as I've covered, and I look forward to further debate of the bill. Thank you.